Lord uses these shakings, both micro shakings in our own life, macro shakings as a country and as a nation, to unravel your comfortability and your judgments and your prejudices and your dogmas. That's already been happening for 2-3 years, but the last couple weeks,
it's undeniable.
It's undeniable.
We should name this podcast "What is Going On?"
And you know what's good about it? Let's start with the good. So you can get pretty negative pretty quick in these waters, but the good would be this. Because the veneer's falling, and because of desperation, the elite are showing their bottoms. A shot at the president is an example of that. But because they're doing that, I'm having the most fascinating conversations with people. Already post-COVID, if people are paying attention, their worldview's gotten shaken, their foundation is shaken, and the Lord uses these shakings, both micro shakings in our own life, macro shakings as a country and as a nation, to unravel your comfortability and your judgments and your prejudices and your dogmas and the things you just believe because your grandma believed them. And so that's already been happening for 2-3 years. But the last couple weeks, I've had people call me, Sean, that I can't believe, and they are like, look,
it's undeniable.
It's undeniable.
Yeah.
It's so wild. Now they're not ready to see the supernatural realm, which is going on. I see the Lord in this.
If they don't have a biblical worldview, then they're looking at the things as what's going on as corruption and happenstance. Like these people are just corrupt. They're just trying to.
They're seeing one
vie
level,
for power,
one dimension.
Yeah, it's a battle going on right now. It's red versus blue.
The kingdom of men.
And whatever happens because they're going to get muddy and dirty, and they're going to start, as they get closer to that moment of grabbing power, the knives are going to come out, and they're going to do.
And it's just whoever's the most ruthless. Yeah.
And whatever side of the coin you land on, that blue or red, you're going to think some things are good, some things are bad. I don't think the biblical Christian, that's their view that they should have. I don't think that's an honest view. I don't think it's a realistic view. I don't think it's a truthful view of what's happening. Because if you just look at it that way, then you're just saying, I either support corruption, and corruption's part of the human endeavor, and we just need to accept it. Even if it's corruption to the point of like assassination attempt and killing,
I think we're beyond corruption,
but I think that's some people's argument is just this is just human nature on display, and it is always going to be what it is, and we just got to accept it and go along with it. I don't think that's. I think what you're talking about, what people are reaching out to you, Brock, right now and saying, "Oh my God, what are we seeing right now?" Is people coming to the reality that we're beyond just like simple human corruption or competition. Or vying for power. We're seeing something that is only could be answered in a way of saying there's something totally diabolical, evil going on. And I can't believe, and if you're on the other side of the blue side of things, you're like, I can't believe my side would go to this level. Maybe that's what they're coming to.
Maybe. And
if you're on the right side of things and you're like, I can't believe our presidential candidate almost got killed. And now we're realizing there's some real stakes here. There's life or death going on.
And maybe even if you...
This is not just a game. It's not just, haha, funny, meme.
Yeah. Well,
even if you're a fence sitter,
even if you consider yourself a fence sitter, I don't care about politics. I'm purple. This is the interesting thing about that. We were this close to civil war. And I know that for a fact, being in the military and have as many military friends I have. The ramifications for that bullet are more than people realize. I can't really predict. Nobody can predict. But as we're talking right now, the nation would look unbelievably different.
Yes. If you look at history.
So it doesn't matter if you're into politics.
Yeah. And
that's true like civilian.
It's true what you're saying, Brock, because if you look at history, there's been that's not a little moment, but I think there's been little moments building up to that major moment. And if you look at world history, when we set off like world wars or huge bloody encounters of humanity, it's been a triggering moment or a light switch moment or on-off moment of something like assassination attempt or assassination successful operation on a presidential candidate, like what we see. Where was it? World War I was Prince Ferdinand killed.
Right.
you have
World War II is a Treaty of Versailles. They didn't realize what they were doing when they did that, but they sparked World War II when they did that.
So something like that is people will hear what you're saying and be like, oh, that's crazy.
I mean, really?
No.
Do you still think people are saying it? Gonna think it's crazy?
I think some people.
You got these good old people forget. There's a lot of the country. This is what I know that they don't know. There is a lot of the country that is not in Miami, Chicago, New York, and LA.
Yeah.
And you know what? They're up to their neck in like voicelessness, consequenceless actions from the coast. And this guy, for whatever reason, has resonated with them. And you just get to take him out. I mean, already, some of these vets I know, they watched the withdrawal from Afghanistan and wept. Now they know Iraq was just all that was money laundering by the rich. And they know that now, Sean. Now, what I'm talking about is they're highly trained on some sort of Percocet to deal with the pain or drinking themselves into oblivion. And these guys just need a reason. And I don't think the American people have really grappled with how close we were to the apple cart getting turned over. Like, we should be praying and thanking God. And I do believe the Lord turned his head. I do believe that.
Yeah.
The freakishness of that, right? The dude's popping rounds off, right? Everything about that is so wild.
I thank God for that, because I wouldn't want to see what the day after, if that was successful, what the day after would have been. I think
so it's above politics. It
would have been a boiling pot at that point in regards to how politics going forward.
But I derailed to get back, regardless of the blue and red. Those circumstances are now bleeding beyond just political loyalties and partisan bickering and corruption. You're like, oh, these are just corruption. Corrupt's going to be corrupt. DC's going to be, politicians. That's not what we're talking about.
Yeah, and people who are not knee deep in understanding what's going on in politics and probably international politics, what's really going on in the global power structure and somewhat conspiracy mindset in regards to conversations that people would have in understanding like power structures of like BlackRock, Vanguard, international money powers, those type of things. If people are not knee deep in that, they're not going to think the conversation of me and you are having is as serious as it is.
Right. Because
they're going to look at surface level politics and they're going to look at surface level movements in regards to government, and they're not going to be like, oh, it's government as it's always been.
And they don't have the bandwidth, and they roll their eyes, and they're not interested in it, and it's hard to get somebody interested in that.
But this is so let me go back to my statement in regards to biblically having an understanding of what God I believe is doing. In the book of Revelation, I think it's the end of Revelation, God says, I no longer shake just the earth, but I shake the heavens and the earth. And he says, I do this now to see what will stand will stand. Okay, so God is giving us a picture of like a sifting. So when you go in there and you harvest wheat, you put it on a sifting floor, right? So you take the wheat, you put it down
there. On a thrashing floor or something?
Thrashing floor, the sifting floor, and you thrash it or you sift it, and the word thrashing is probably better because you're knocking it back and forth and you're separating the kernel from like the husk. And then the husk actually flies off in the air, no longer is able to stand at the bottom anymore. And what you have left is actually what is the valuable part of the wheat, right? So God has given us that picture in the end times that he's now going to shift both the heavens and the earth, and he's going to actually reveal what is actually the valuable part of what is actually able to stand before him. Well, how is God able to do that? Is he just going to send a violent earthquake and topple every single skyscraper and bring down every nation? Yeah, we get that symbolism or what possibly will coming in the end times, but that's not necessarily what God is saying there. I think he's putting a understanding before us of saying he's going to bring down every single power structure that we would ever put our hope or our faith in.
I agree.
That there's nowhere other than turn our faith in other than him. We will realize that the emperor has no clothes.
He did that in Egypt, Sean. Yes. He did the same thing.
And so what is going on in our culture today? Exactly that. God, there's no way that you can put your faith in any of these things anymore. I have very few people now believe that our government is actually not corrupt. Very few people believe that the president actually has
figurehead.
power and he's not a figurehead. Very few people believe that corporations are not just doing things to enrich themselves for power and more money. That the things they're pushing within culture and other things that they're pushing is now detrimental to humanity, not for humanity.
Right.
They are putting these things out in the open now. Agenda 2024, 2030. You start looking at DEI and what's the other one? I forgot the other acronym that they're putting out there in regards to diversity, equity, and inclusion.
But inclusion,
on the surface level, these things sound very good, but the implementation and what they're actually putting out into the culture is damaging to the culture.
Tearing us apart.
It's controlling everything. It's actually making it harder for you to buy a house, get involved in the economy, actually get wealth from
raise your children in innocence,
in the middle class sense.
Everything you
all
can
those
touch.
things are like
Everything
far
you,
off.
everything you touch.
I talked to 20-something-year-olds today, and their mindset is like, I'm never going to be able to own a house.
Yeah,
I'm going to be living with my mom all the time.
Right.
I have to pay hundreds of $1,000s worth of college debt.
That in and of itself is devastating to a culture, because if you have no on ramp for a generation, then you're not going to have any buy in from them.
So, and people look at this as happenstance, but really what's going on is what they have said to us, they're actually doing. When they say something like from the World Economic Forum, you will own nothing and be happy. How do you implement that, Brock? How do you get a public to actually own nothing and be happy? I don't think the happy part is ever coming, but how do you get a populace to now own nothing? You got to force them into owning nothing. And the only way to do that is by rack them with so much debt that you can't own anything.
Right.
And we have a mentality today. I just want to put this before people, and I'll open it up to you after I say this. We think we own things today. I don't own my house.
No.
I'm a homeowner.
We pay the king.
Let me ask you a question. You don't pay your taxes.
Right, your property taxes.
Do you own your house?
Right. And that doesn't go away after you retire.
No.
You never own
and
it.
It's every year. What happens to your taxes?
And they tax your legacy that you pass on to your children.
What happens to your taxes every year?
Right, up. It's about to go up 7%.
Most people own their car. No, they're usually paying, now it's 7-year loans that you're taking out on a car.
They're serfs.
Your college loan debt, can you write that off? Can you claim bankruptcy? No. You're racked with that college loan debt for the rest of your life until you pay it off. Good luck at $150,000. That's a mortgage. That's a 30-year mortgage most people are taking out. And I'm not trying to be negative. I'm just trying to bring the reality of what they're doing. They're trying to implement something. This is not conspiracy anymore. This is not conspiracy theory. I should say this is conspiracy. It's not conspiracy theory anymore. It's not a theory. They have publicized these papers openly. It's an open source document that
in fact, everything we say, I always encourage people, do your own research by all means. I have nothing to hide. Everything, if I'm wrong, call us on it. I've done my own research on everything you're saying is true. It's worse than what you're saying, actually. It's worse in this way. It'd be one thing if that was negligence, if that was incompetence. It's not. It's all purposeful to enslave and ensnare. And on top of all the economic turmoil you just described, then they just dump the gasoline on that economic fire of complete cultural chaos.
Yes.
All on purpose, so that you're full of anxiety.
People never grab a hold of the cultural chaos unless they're feeling financial chaos. You have to bring a populace to not feeling safe financially. You need the financial first.
Yeah.
Go look at world history.
You need to undo the
Hitler couldn't do what he did unless there was financial chaos first.
Right.
Then he could operate in the cultural psyche. You can operate now because people don't feel safe. If people are able to go and enjoy life, go on vacation, buy a yacht, buy a car, house,
it's the opiate.
They're not going to go and ride in the streets. People in Martha's Vineyard is not riding in the streets. They're able to go out and enjoy wine, and it's just not going to be in the back of their mind ever. It's the inner city that don't have money, don't have anywhere to turn to, that you get them out in the streets and riding. And that's where you flip it, and you flip the culture. That's what we see going on right now. And that's why you're pushing now DEI and all these things into the populace, because now when you have a populace that are upset, you can turn them to the government, you can turn them to other people, rich people, and you can make them angry enough to pull down the system. Because the thing about America is America can never be invaded from the outside. It only can be destroyed from within.
Let me
so if you're going to topple America, you got to do it from within.
You guys,
America.
you and me are good friends, and we think the same, and that's why we're good friends, and that's why we're doing a podcast together. And we've talked about all this stuff at nauseum in our free time. But something that I've been frustrated about, better part of 15 years, I know I study it and think about it too much. I'll admit that, too much. I don't have the balance, right? If this is the scale of my life, I need to balance it out a little bit more with like some more fun cat videos on the internet or something. Yeah. But I would just say this, one of the great frustrations I have as a believer in Christ is I've always been divergent of mind. You've always been divergent of mind. We connect on that. We see things other people don't seem to see. And I feel like all believers have access to that. And I believe we don't have to walk by sight. The kingdom, we can walk by faith. The Spirit reveals some things to you. I've read the Word of God, and civic things have exploded in my mind. I know that's happened. I've seen correlations. Not just that, but you don't have to walk in fear. You don't have to let other people govern your speech. I say what I feel the Lord wants me to say. Full stop. And when I look around at believers, I look at slaves. Yeah, they lick their finger in the cultural wind. I'm frustrated by this.
But what you're saying is correct. And this is why I said, so why is God sifting both the heavens and the earth right now? Only in the sifting do you feel the disenchantment of the kingdom of this world.
Yes. Well, I want to think that that's happening.
So what's going on?
I'm not seeing enough. I'm still seeing Egyptians in the church.
Yes. But there's going to be a time where it's going to be undeniable where if you're a believer, a true believer, right, and you're really filled with the Holy Spirit, I'm talking about true believers now, God is not going to be satisfied with you being dedicated to the kingdom of this world or the kings of this world. God is going to put you through a sifting and shaking so that you would turn your heart to the true King of Kings and Lord of Lords.
And I believe that's
and
happening.
His kingdom. Now, the amazing thing, Bear Brock, because I think we need to have this conversation, is once you shift your mindset that you're not of this world, you're not of the kingdom of this world, now all of a sudden you realize you're living in a different economy.
Yes. You're
living in a different...
You value things different. You value time different. Everything's different. When
I'm not beholden to this system anymore.
The kingdom of God values things different through the Beatitudes. People become important, not things. They can't ensnare you with wealth. The most dangerous man is the man you can't bribe. Now, every Christian should be a walking time bomb to these elitists.
So I want to say this to Christians. I guarantee you, if you grab a hold of this mindset, if you allow God to do this,
free,
you will not have fear anymore. I don't have fear of politics anymore.
Not only do you let go of all those things, this kabuki theater that we got going on here, this isn't real. It's all.
Let's go back to the debates. Before the debates, for months we were hearing from the media, if you don't believe this is the best Biden ever, F you. He is the most spry and sharp Biden that we've ever had in history. This was Morning Joe, MSNBC, CNN.
Everybody. You could play 2 hours of people saying this.
The press secretary, the White House press secretary, Kamala Harris, you name it. Everybody was out there saying, if you question his health or you question...
I'll play a little bit of it in this podcast.
You are crazy. And then all of a sudden, they put out the debate. And everybody across the nation
buck naked
gets to see him staring out
just walking around with
staring out into space with a 1,000-yard stare. I've seen that before. My grandmother died of Alzheimer's. My grandfather, my great aunt, I've seen Alzheimer's right in my face. I'm trying to pull back the curtain on the theater that's going on so you can see behind the separating curtain from the actors on the stage and the people pulling the strings in the background. Why, right before the DNC convention, are they putting Biden out into public view, debating Trump on stage? This is the Democratic Party that's very cunning. They understand 100% what they're doing. They didn't do that by accident. Then the message didn't go out to MSNBC and CNN and Morning Joe by accident to all of a sudden throw Biden under the bus and start talking about his cognitive ability and that we have to start replacing him because we're going to lose to Trump. They did that on purpose. They knew exactly what they were doing. I believe now they're moving, and the plan that they had is to get him out before the convention. I don't really think they even want Kamala. because I think what's going to happen in the convention now, it's
And a coup.
going to be up to an open movement of whoever the financial backers are,
Yeah,
whoever's
that's
going
right.
to put their money.
I was just about to say this. When we say they, I don't mean these clowns with face paint on in the media. They might as well be the puppets your children play with. I'm talking about money. I'm talking about global
And now
money.
this is power structures behind the DNC. Big time money power structures are controlling the DNC and what the DNC does.
I want to point this out again. Let's say we set up the biggest Leviathan that our words could. That's what we're doing here. All these actors and these shadow puppets and these money actors that never show their face because they're cowards. Let's say we scared you to death by painting this Leviathan. Even that Leviathan should not scare the believer. If a church, every member of a church and every believer in Jesus would rise up in their spirit power and shake free the serfdom that they live under, like addiction to Netflix, addiction to doing things exactly like everybody else does, and live in the spirit-filled adventure that Jesus has for our life, this Leviathan would not be able to stand up to that.
Always have our first allegiance to what? God's kingdom.
Of God.
So our service to the kingdom that we're in is through the lens of the service to God's kingdom.
I'm going to wrap it up with this, Sean. What I want to encourage my brothers and sisters to do is draw close to the Lord right now, because he's doing something. And the best reaction in the face of chaos is to run to him. Share yourself up in him. When Egypt is fallen and the plagues are tearing down there was Goshen. And we have to take him at his word that he is a faithful God, that he loves us, that he cares about us, and that he will be provisional for his own. I'm not talking about comfort and luxury, but we got to seek those things in a seriousness that we haven't before, because the times are a-changing. Bob Dylan wrote a prophetic song. The times are a-changing. And read the lyrics of that song, by the way. Bob Dylan was knowing a thing or two before his time.
Empty suit souls, little bomb soul.